Welcome to Anecdotes for Success with Matt and Paul. Storytelling is an art form, emphasizing the value and learning that is created through personal experience. Our purpose is to share these stories and experiences with the listener. Everyone has a powerful testimony. Let's use them to level up to our best life with truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective.
Big shout out to Isaac Mather for the new podcast intro. You can check Isaac's music out on all socials or directly at isaacmathermusic.com. Hey, Matt, we found each other finally. It's been crazy, but that's okay. How you been?
I've been good. I've been good. Like you said, it's been crazy. It's been it's busy. I mean, this is my busy time of year anyway, you know, in the subway world, but also I've had a couple other things going on as well. You've had some acquisitions and new things going on, and so have I. So, those all that has kept me busy. Plus children and all the joy and wonders those bring, and all the other fun stuff fun stuff and responsibilities that take place.
Right. Yeah, June's busy for me, not just because we're wrapping the school year up, the awards dinners, the
Yeah.
banquets, not challenging and difficult, but time consuming. And I've found the more I've been doing with my acquisitions and projects, I have less time for social media now. It's funny how that works. So it makes me wonder sometimes the people that are on all the time talking about the stuff they're doing, if they're really doing it.
That's a good point. There's a lot of people that obviously, I mean, I think that their business isn't the business, it's the talking about the business, right?
Right.
And I guess, if there's value to what they're bringing, and they're bringing knowledge and such that's helpful, I guess that's got some, that's nice, but you're probably learning a lot right now going, well, you got to do it in order to really understand the nuance of it, right? Because
Right.
I always say there's nuance to everything. Anything I've ever been involved in, Paul, from running arenas, which is kind of unique and many people wouldn't understand it, to making subs, which sandwiches, which everyone thinks they know about because everyone's probably made a sandwich, right? And everything in between that I've ever done, or conversations I've had with people, the most obvious things you think, there's nuance to it all. That I love talking to people about what they do in life, because I learn all this nuance. I go, oh my, I never would have thought of that. I never knew that existed. And so that's why, it kind of, odd way, it comes back to what you've been saying for a long time. You teach and you teach certain ththings, but you've wanted to get involved in the real world doing of it because you want to understand it better, right? Because you can't understand it. I've got this interesting educational background in terms of the degrees I have, a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, all in the business area. And I'll say that'll come up, let's say, in a conversation with my employees oftentimes, and I immediately follow that in most cases with the next statement, which is, but I've learned more standing behind the sandwich line working with you guys than I ever learned in a classroom. And it's true. It's true. I've learned way more about business standing in that business, doing the day to day, working with my teammates, with customers, through all the trials and tribulations that come up in a day, than I ever learned out of some textbook or some talking head like me standing at the head of a classroom telling you all about management and all about marketing and all these wonderful subjects that I have degrees in, and I guess therefore make me qualified to discuss it. What I really, the knowledge, the true knowledge I really have comes from getting my hands dirty. And that's not a knock on anyone. That's just pillar number one. That's just truth. And I'm not gonna pretend it's not, and so that's why you know, that's why it's well, that's why you get to bring some authenticity to the table when you talk about these things. So anyway, I don't even know how I got there, but
Well, no,
here
well,
we have.
couple things I wrote down. Experience is the best teacher.
Mm,
There's nothing, I mean, that's why my class is such a success the way we do it. And we had record numbers of applicants because it's not me, it's not the class, it's the Thursdays they're out on their rotations and the Fridays we're on our site visits and the people we fly in and the money we raise and the corporate board meetings, right?
yeah.
Now, I have students going away to school, which I'm not saying is good or bad, it's always good. But if you don't supplement school with more experience in the next 4 years, what do you graduate with? Like if you're going to go to college and take all your classes, and I don't care if you have a 4.0, and you just sit and play video games or you hang out and you're very social and go to parties, whatever you do, go to football games, that's great. But if you don't have an internship or some type of experience each year to go with it, what's the point? In this day and age, I'm not saying it was different 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But you have to supplement all that learning with experience, or you're going to have to do it when you graduate, which means probably an entry level spot you don't want to be in, which isn't bad either. But you have to get the experience.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's a great point. And one thing that you made me think of when you're talking about that is the experiences they get provided in your classroom lead them to relationships and put them ahead of the game and give them confidence and access to do other things others don't. And what I'm getting at is, we had a student reach out to us, one of your students, just this last week about an investment, right? In a business he's created and he's working on. Paul, that doesn't just come out of thin air. Hit that uh the business, the access to people who could invest, the relationship with them that you could make that ask and want to set up a meeting. That all comes from the experiences that you're just talking about that you set up, that your classroom sets up, that you set up within that framework, I guess, of your classroom. That wasn't just some young enterprising student who decided, hey, I'll reach out. Like that's the culmination of all these other things, all this experience this student has had in your classroom environment now can lead to a meeting setup like that and ask, literally an investment into a Shark Tank like investment into a business. And that comes from just what you're talking about. That doesn't come from, anywhere else. It has to come from that experience.
Right. And he's pursuing college. He's going away to school. So
Yeah.
that's good. But while he's there, I guarantee it, regardless of what happens when he meets with us, he's going to meet other people. He's gonna hang out with the type of people doing the types of things he wants to do, and he's going to build a network. And that's when school's 100% worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
So him and I one of the few times I've tweeted, my X game's been down lately because I've been so busy. I was on my morning walk the other day and passed a student with a truck for his company that he started, honked and waved. Got a text from another student that's been doing some things, and then I saw my landscaping student from a few years ago that he's made his college journey longer because his business is so busy and now has 2 employees, just going nuts with small construction projects and buying assets and mowing lawns and landscaping. And these types of kids, they're not mean to other people, they don't criticize, and they don't hate on other people, because the first point I wrote down when you were talking, those in the arena don't have time to do that.
So true.
The people
So true.
the people that aren't doing all that, it's easy to just say, why is that person starting that? That'll never work. What
Yeah.
I would do, you're so lucky, right? I was texting you about that. I was going through a tough weekend, and I'm like, I can't wait till I'm sitting there and someone says, "Man, you're so lucky you have this." I'm just gonna smile and be like, "Yeah, thanks."
Yeah, yeah. When you're sending me pictures of the work you're doing on Father's Day weekend, um, you know, and you're right, you're gonna get that, and it's gonna hit you, and you're gonna think, you're not even gonna have any idea how many hours you put in, and you're not gonna care. It's not gonna matter. But the word luck you won't feel like it came from some sort of luck. You won't feel like all of a sudden you woke up, went to your mailbox, there was a set of keys in there with an address, and you yanked them out and you drove to this address and you opened up and there was this beautiful building and all the things you needed to start your
Right.
business there. It won't I bet it won't feel like that. I bet it'll feel kind of different.
You know what though? I don't want to say I'm careful when I say this stuff. I've never been happier. I don't mean that because, of course, I had a wonderful family. I got married. I had two
Yes.
daughters. So the point is, I'm feeling that same level of happiness that I can't lock my kids in the basement forever, and I can't repeat
Mm,
certain actions in life like that actually happen, but I can replicate the feeling. And
yeah.
I think that's what most people don't do is they get older. I was the my students graduated earlier than public school because the academy we're at. I I I always leave them with this. Who's ready to leave high school? And of course they all raise their hands,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
I go, you've been a student for 12 years. So think of this feeling right now, how ready you are to explode and take on the world. Why in 12 years from now are you going to think you're just at your job or your career and that's just the way it's going to be and there's going to be happiness? You have to keep repeating this
Mhm.
high school graduation experience. You have to, 4 years, 12 years, 15, whenever you're ready, and you have to do it with sound financial decisions, networking, meeting people, and most importantly, trying things. And if you don't do that, you're never going to be, I don't care what job you give somebody or career or purpose, you have to change it up. And so I just wish more people do that. I'm ranting a little, but the first point was those in the arena don't criticize, and you have to replicate feelings when you try new things, or life gets very stagnant and stale.
Well, I love it, Paul. I couldn't agree more, and I think that message is so important. I know several kids graduating, one of which is quite close, much closer to us as a family. And um, well, my wife and I we didn't get to go to his graduation party Saturday because we were at it was our anniversary and we had plans and you know to your point earlier, some things are just most important, and my wife and our relationships right at the top of that list. In any case, I was writing in his card, and you can write a lot of things in a card, a
Right.
lot of throwaway stuff, a lot of congratulations, I'm proud of you, kind of stuff. Doesn't make it not true, but I don't like to do that kind of thing. I like to put some thought into what I write. And I said, I hope you. I'm trying to think exactly what I said, but I hope you. What I really hope for you is it is time to go pursue your adventure. It is time for you to go become the man you were put on this world to be, by God, in my opinion. Um, and and that's going to take certain kinds of decision making, like you just mentioned, and that kind of thing. It is graduating from high school is not the end. It
I
is
hope not.
now. It's in some ways you're kind of getting thrown out depending on what you're doing, but it's time to go out in the real world and make some real world decisions. It's time to become an adult. It's time to become a man or a woman, and in the sense it's time to go make those decisions and go find out who you are. um most people at 17, 18 don't know who they are yet. I know I didn't. Most people at 21, 22 don't know who they are yet. I'm 48, Paul. I'm not sure I know exactly who I am yet. And I don't mean that in some I mean that in a way like I'm never done learning. I'm never done becoming who I am, And then, so my mother and I got talking about the graduation and my young daughter, and the schooling that my wife and I plan on making sure she receives, and we were talking about just the idea. I said, my mom was laughing because my wife and I are talking about doing some homeschooling and some of that kind of stuff. And what we really want is just create this child who just wants to learn and finds it. Too many people don't see it as a lifelong thing. There's an end date, right? I'm done with high school. I'm done with college. And that's the exact opposite of what I'm trying to teach my children. It's the opposite of what I think I've taught my older daughter, although she went through much more of the traditional learning. And it's not what I intend to teach my older or my younger daughter. I want, and so my mom's laughing. She goes, who's going to teach her math and science? Because I was notoriously poor in those in high school, mostly because I didn't care, right? Because I had absolutely zero interest in them, zero
Right.
passion for them. And now that some of that's changed, but I said, Mom, that's not what's important to me, is that she knows the Pythagorean theorem or at what temperature, water freezes. Not that those things don't have their place. What's important to me is that she becomes a lifelong interested learner. That's success to me. Not a GPA, not a certificate. That Paul, I just heard, I think it was on Joe Rogan, that the average Harvard student last year graduated with this is average, 3.99 GPA.
I believe it.
I mean,
inflated. It's all
right? What does it mean now? What are we doing? I mean, there's no standard anymore, right? That's preposterous. Not to get on a tangent on that, but it just popped in my head when I was talking about degrees and they don't mean anything when it becomes about that. So,
it's funny. I think it's great. And you know what? With your situation, you could revisit it every year. They can plop back in a traditional experience. They don't have to do a hybrid. You could go to high school at some point. You could maybe do none of that. There might not be a need for it. Like, it's not what you're
right,
doing is not absolute. Like, you have to start at age 5 and take this
right,
12-year journey in the classroom.
right.
Because most kids graduate, and I'll say most. I'm not looking at any data when I say this. Good or bad, average, they're tired of learning that way. Right? Why is my program exploding at the seams? Because if they get a bad grade, it's not because the exam, it's because they showed up late. They wore sneakers with business professional, right? They didn't look at the Google Calendar the day before. Their resume was late. They didn't write thank you cards. Like, that's just learning. It's not a test with multiple choice. And why would your daughter have to go through that if you don't want her to? I think it's awesome. And that's coming from an educator, not a teacher in a union in public education. There's a difference, right?
There's a difference, exactly.
And there's so many good educators. Like if you could handpick 5 or 6 of your favorite teachers that and just bring them to your house every day, that would be awesome too.
Yeah, Paul, that exactly. I don't want to be misunderstood on this, because my respect for educators is extreme, and I frankly, it's a system that I don't like. It's certainly not that the educator, and I may change my mind. Things may be different. You know what I mean? My daughter's not quite 8 months old. I haven't made, I might
You didn't ask her yet? You didn't ask her?
My mind. We're still trying to get her to crawl and say mama, so
no, and you know what? To play devil's advocate, there's some real cool social things that happen in school.
Yes, there are. There's a lot to consider, right? There's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
I'd be a fool not to consider them all if I truly want what's I think is best for my child.
I had a student just graduated my program that that's an actress. I mean, she was in The Greatest Showman, Matilda on Broadway,
Yeah,
and The
yeah.
Blacklist, things like that. She was telling me, I think it was fourth grade when she was on Broadway. She didn't go to school that whole year, but she had private tutors.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. I remember
So,
talking to her.
and then when she was in the one movie, but finished her high school career as your high school student that plays other sports and does her thing and goes to auditions. So you could do it on a yearly basis if you wanted to.
Yeah, Paul, I think your point is a good one. There's choices out there, right? And there's a lot
Yeah.
of different things, you can do depending on the life and the things you want. And that's an excellent point. Yeah.
And to tie it back in, you have, well, more parents have the opportunity than we give ourselves credit for. But my point is, as parents, let's leave it at that. If you put experiences as the best teacher, well, then you have the ability to provide a lot of those things.
Yeah.
Not as the only teacher, but
That's the only, yeah.
why would you write off those experiences?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
that's what I think. Yeah, I mean your classroom's experiential and that's part of what has convinced me how important that. And Paul, I didn't have a bad education experience in high school. I had a
no.
wonderful, you know what I mean? I had a wonderful educational experience in
Here's
high
my
school.
point. John Adams sent his 14-year-old son with the US ambassador to Russia in the 1700s to learn.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a coincidence. He ended up becoming a president himself, because who else had that experience in the 1700s when you probably didn't stray more than a couple miles from your home?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
So
what do
he
you
had a
think?
perspective that
What do you
most
do?
people didn't have.
Would they have flown Delta back then or
Yeah,
American?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, can you imagine what that would have looked like to?
Without telling his wife, just like, oh, by the way, little Johnny's in Russia for a couple of years. Like, but that's the perspective and the importance, you know. So I think we sell ourselves short on that today, that why can't you have experiences mixed in with traditional education even?
Well, I think you're pro I think you're proving that, Paul. But have you have you had your classroom long enough to consider that proven in some way? Do people argue that, or is that a accepted methodology, or you know what I mean? How do what do you what's
I,
kind of the kickback? What's kind of the pushback on your
well,
class?
the proof is the fact that we have record number of applicants. I mean, I took a position where I didn't have enough kids to fill the classroom when I took it 9 years ago, and now we're cutting people. Kids want to be there, students want to be there, and I don't, and that's fine. Now, the pushback comes from when I want to keep them the whole day, and their teacher at their traditional high school is like, well, they already missed 2 days. They're missing these valuable notes, or can they come late to your class today because we have an extra study session before our Regents exam?
Mm,
Kids get mad, and depending on the situation, I kindly write back, of course, because I'm very flexible with that.
yeah,
But the pushback comes from sometimes the very controlled person that
yeah.
just loves the room and the control. Just like in sports, there's coaches that love absolute control, and then there's coaches that let people be creative and playmakers, but you have to deal with the consequence of mistakes more often, right?
I
Uh,
love that. You're
and
right.
and,
I
and
love that.
I had the students every year. We have the students write notes to next year's class that I pass out the first day of what to expect. And sometimes I've had a kid say, I wish I did more with this year, because the fact we don't have exams, kids can do the bare minimum and it looks easy to the outside world.
Yeah.
Or I have kids that had 3 internships their senior year helping marketing startups or some other company start a social media site. But that's life. I mean, I don't know if everybody having a 3.9 GPA means they got anything out of it either. So
Exactly.
the trouble with education, even in the best public schools, is we have to put a number on everything. And some
Mm-hmm.
things, like, why couldn't every senior have a portfolio they hand in for graduation, or a senior project? I know some schools do. Why does it
Mm,
have to be a test? I think
yeah.
it's easier to assign value to a test. It's A portfolio is too intangible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, those are
so
the
I think that's
challenges.
the proof. I think that's the proof.
Yeah, no, that's what I was curious because it's been long enough, and in my opinion, as an outsider looking in, it seems so obvious. But then I, I like it. I like objectivity. I like data. I like to know, when they go on to college, they get higher grades. When they go on, as if that necessarily matters. That may not even be the kind of proof we want. Or they start more businesses, earn more
Right.
income, test out as happier than others, which I hate those tests as well because I think those have severe flaws in them as well. You see those happiness tests, and I'm like,
Right.
that's usually people who have no hope. They just know who they've just been told this is who I'm gonna be. I can't go up, I can't go down. I'm good, so I'm happy. Anyway, I was just curious about that.
Yeah. And, I lose some good students that never apply to the program, and they're just happy with the traditional end of their high school experience, but still are connected enough. They can, I mean, anybody can reach out and go to a shadow or an internship. They don't have
Yeah,
to go through me. Right.
right.
So there's no right or wrong way. I just know it's, it's it's very humbling to know people reach out to apply to want to be part of something that's not normal, because you are missing half your school day at your
Yeah,
normal school. So I give them a lot of credit, but there's no wrong way, just like we were
right.
talking with your daughter. So uh yeah, so I was originally going to ask us to talk about the four pillars today, and we got going, and
So like a
I
normal conversation for us.
yeah, we're going to call this one Experience is the Best Teacher. So we'll
And
do the four pillars next time. And then this summer, when we slow down by our standards a little, we'll have some time. It's hard to get a guest right now because we're all over the place knowing when we're gonna
yeah,
podcast.
yeah, when we're gonna bring the person to the table, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, maybe we'll get an AI guest or something and just let the AI do all the talking.
I'll tell you, Paul, it's getting interesting. That's a whole nother half hour conversation, but that is getting
Stopping it.
interesting.
Hey, all right, Matt,
Uh,
thank you. We'll talk
uh,
soon.
all right, sounds good.
Yep, bye.
Bye.